Was nobody following this guy?
Well, when they started having the similarities, they did actually start following him, but I mean, he'd lose them a lot. But I also was listening to the documentary that I was watching on it. The investigator was like, yeah, we were following him, but it's mostly just him driving up the road, going to work, going back home, driving up the road, going to work, going back home. And after a while, if you can't prove anything, it's a waste of time.
And money and resources.
Yeah. Exactly.
I get that, yeah.
In 1980, an Ann Arbor woman had called the police because she started feeling really awkward about a strange man following her down the street, which is his MO, of course. She hid in a doorway until the police were able to get to her location, and they saw him walking up and down the street frantically looking for her.
No!
They pulled him over because he was driving erratically and identified him as Carl and/or Coral Watts. They found screwdrivers and wood filing tools, but he was a handyman, so whatever.
Yeah.
But they also then found a book that had Rebecca Huff, someone who had been murdered several months prior on a college campus. They found her book with her name on it.
He took like a little souvenir memento.
Mm-hmm. In 1981, he was brought in on a warrant and forced to give a blood sample. They interviewed him but couldn't charge him for anything, and the blood test didn't seem to link him to anything either. He got frustrated with being what he considered hounded by the investigators, so he moved to Columbus, Texas, really close to Houston. He worked in an oil company, but he would spend a lot of his weekends cruising and skulking through the city streets in Houston. When they found out where he went and that he may or may not have some connection to Houston, the people that were running the task force sent over all the files they had on him and what they suspect him of to Houston police. But Houston police also couldn't find enough evidence to bring him in or charge him with anything or link him to any of the crimes that were happening now in Houston.
This is infuriating.
In 1981, Lillian Tilley was attacked and she was drowned in her apartment, which is, it's really strange too. He doesn't stay really constant about his MO.
Yeah.
It really is.
I've noticed.
He likes torturing women, but he doesn't always do it. He has sexually assaulted women, but he doesn't always do that. And more specifically, he doesn't normally do that at all. He stabs them sometimes, but then chokes them other times. Or
drowns them.
Like, there's no set motive. He's just wandering through and finding whatever. A 25-year-old Elizabeth Montgomery was stabbed in the chest while she was out walking her dogs. Almost pretty crazy quickly, another woman about 21 years old, Susan Wolfe, was attacked and murdered as she tried to get into her house from her car.
Did she know he was there and tried getting in real quick?
Nope.
Okay.
He just existed. He was pretty good at stalking. He'd been practicing since he was 12, so
yeah.
He's had quite a while to wander forward. On May 23rd, 1982, Watts had ambushed roommates Lori Leister and Melinda Aguilar at their apartment. He had tied them both up. He tried to drown Lister in the bathtub, and Aguilar was able to escape by jumping headfirst off of her balcony.
Oh, no.
Holy cow. But she survived. Both of them actually survived.
The one that he tried drowning survived, too?
Yep. A neighbor came and saved Lister, and then he was caught and thankfully arrested. On the same day, a body was found. It was that of Michelle Mayday. She was also drowned in her bathtub in a nearby apartment.
Man, not a great way to go.
No. They started to link a lot of the murders that were in the area, especially, to him. And because he was pretty slippery, most often he just kind of was like, toodaloo, you guys don't have enough evidence. I'm going to just move again, whatever, and continue doing what I'm doing.
Which is so sketch for me when you just move away from an area because you know that they're close to catching you.
But also, it's not like they could have done anything. They didn't have enough evidence. And the concern was that even though he had already been questioned about the murders that had happened prior to this, they weren't, no blood evidence, no seminal fluids, because he didn't, like I said, he didn't sexually assault most of his victims. They had nothing to actually tie him to there, except for that someone had maybe seen them around. But that would be considered basically hearsay in the court system. So it's like, I saw him there, and you're like, cool, it's a big city. I don't know what to tell you. even after they were trying to link together his past from when he was 15 and him spending time in prison for attacking a woman in a similar manner to a lot of the other women that he was attacking, they still had nothing to convict him for murder. So they started arranging a plea bargain. And with it being Texas and it being in the 80s, it was a bit more skewed. They would give him immunity from the murder charge and or any other murder charges that they had on the books that they were maybe able to connect him with. Instead of actually pleading to those murders or to manslaughter in any capacity, they had him plead to a charge of burglary with the intent to murder, which would carry a 6-year sentence.
How many years?
60.
Oh, okay.
So I'm a mumbler.
For a second, I thought you said 6 years, and I was like, what the shit?
He agreed to that deal and had, after it was all signed, started confessing to at least 12 murders, specifically in Texas. So he's not even copping to any of the ones that were in Michigan. He eventually, in confessing to these murders, had led them to 2 bodies of 2 women, one of which he tied her tube top around her neck and just hung her off a bush.
What?
Why? The Michigan authorities had refused that they would also be in on the same deal because they had so much evidence that they were trying to tie to him and couldn't allow that to happen. Like, he would be in jail, but there's a possibility that he could get out.
Yeah.
Eventually, he had claimed that he had killed about 40 women, but had implied after that he had killed about 80, which makes him the most prolific serial killer in America. That's also between the ages of 15 and 29. It's also a really small period of time. So he did what a lot of serial killers kind of do, where it just isn't enough of a high, assumably, to quell whatever
escalation.
Inconsistencies. Yeah, so there's a massive escalation where he's attacking more and more people. But he never actually had confessed outright to any of the murders. He just was like, well, I may or may not have.
Oh, he alluded to it.
Surely.
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't want to be seen as a, quote, mass murderer. To this day, even though obviously the case is currently closed, police still think that he's a suspect of about 90 murders, in addition to the ones that he had confessed to.
That sucks.
He stopped talking when he found out that Ann Arbor wasn't going to give him immunity as well. Here's the worst part about it, right?
Oh, it gets worse.
It gets worse.
Okay.
So he's in custody, right? And they have him on that plea deal. In Texas, at the time, there was an allowance for people to basically work off their sentence by being model prisoners.
He didn't.
We're going to fast forward to 2004, when it's about 2 years before he was scheduled to be released. In 2004, the Michigan Attorney General, Mike Cox, had gone on national TV asking for anyone to come forward with information to try and convict him for murder to make sure that he wasn't actually released, because they tried to amend the law, but because that was already pertaining to him at the time that he was convicted, it wouldn't affect him even if they did. So like I said, he was slated to get out pretty quick.
Yeah.
And be roaming the world. And the documentary I watched, all of them were furious. They're like, no. This would be him legally walking free as a serial killer.
Yeah.
So a lot of people came out of the woodwork and were like, well, I saw him around this case that he had already admitted to, and I saw him around this, and now we have evidence. Here's his car, here's his whatever. When they had acquired more information, and some of the testimonials that the witnesses that were going up and like, well, he came up behind me and was choking me, and I managed to get away. And it's just this woman, she just, like, heart-wrenching. It was terrible. It was just nightmare fuel. And it's been so long since it's actually happened. And even the man who was like, look, I can place him. I can place this person because he looks like him. I can place his car. He came up to me. I visually saw him very, very clearly. And they're like, well, it's 20 years later. How can you even do that? And he's like, well, because I remember. And he stayed super cool under pressure, so good job. That witness was awesome, because his defense attorney was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And he was like, what do you mean? What do I mean? Like, I mean what I said.
Like, girl, I am telling you what I mean.
After all of this, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, thankfully. He was shipped back to Michigan and charged for crimes that obviously happened there. He was found guilty of murdering Helen Dutcher and also Steele, who we talked about a little bit earlier. He later had started appealing, and one was that he should be charged for double jeopardy, which he isn't a part of. He has zero to do with double jeopardy.
But it doesn't apply to him because now they're charging him for different murders that he wasn't charged for.
Correct. So he tried to pull that bullshit, and then he tried also. Apparently, he was like poring over his legal documents, which a lot of people do when they're in prison.
It's not a bad idea.
No, I mean, I would. He found that in the court documentation, it wasn't ever made clear to him that he had been informed that the bathtub and the water that he attempted to drown Lori Leister in was considered a deadly weapon. And because they hadn't made it clear, he then had his charge burglary with the intent to murder brought down to just burglary. Thankfully, people came forward and were like, hey, yeah, no, I definitely saw him. He definitely murdered this girl.
Yeah.
For sure. Which disallowed him from getting out of prison. He eventually was serving 2 life sentences of life without parole in Michigan. The year after he was supposed to get out of prison, originally, when he was getting time off for good behavior. Mm-hmm. So he died of prostate cancer on September 21st in 2007 in Jackson, Michigan. Good job. I'm glad that it was painful for you, you fucking asshole.
Yeah. Sorry
that you had mental disability, but also so do a lot of people and they don't go murder.
Yeah, but maybe don't be a murderer, you know? A choice was made. It wasn't a great one.
One of the most interesting facts about this is that he didn't seem to subscribe to the general thought process that murderers and serial killers were stick within their same race. Yeah. So he'd kill pretty much willy-nilly, mostly killing a lot of white women, but also then killing and or trying to kill black women, people of Hispanic descent. It's like he just didn't care as long as he could injure a woman in some manner. That was Mr. Coral.
That was really fascinating. I'm going to be the whipped cream on top of this murder sundae. So mine is fun.
Good. I'm glad.
Blow my font up to size 16 because I'm blind.
I put mine really high because I was like, I'm tired. I'm never going to be able to read.
So mine is considerably less horrifying.
Wretched.
And sad. Mine is real fun and light. It's kind of like, you remember when I did the Black Forest, how I got super excited and dreamy about it because it's so fun.
Yeah, you got moon-eyed.
So I just decided I wanted to do something kind of like that. So we're going to talk about yokai today.
Okay. Other random thought, you know that was Johanna's entry in her competition this week, right?
No.
Was the Black Forest.
Oh, no, I didn't. I didn't know that. That's fantastic.
She's a cute lady. She knows shit.
And she does incredible work. I feel privileged to be drinking out of her glass right now.
Yeah, because I can't. I'm not cool enough, man.
So before I kind of go into my story, though, I want to talk a little bit about Matthew Meyer.
Okay.
So he has a website called yokai.com. He also has matthewmeyer.net. You can find his Facebook page. And he creates beautiful illustrations. And he's put all the content up for yokai.com. He's really cool. He's really talented. He started yokai.com as kind of a fun Halloween project. He was just doing all of these different paintings and writing the stories about the different yokai. And yokai are supernatural creatures from Japanese folklore. And the word is a combination of the characters for yo, which is attractive or bewitching, and kai, which is mystery and wonder.
That's a fun conglomeration of names.
And like I said, just his work is beautiful. You can buy prints from him. You just have to contact him, like I said, through the website or the Facebook page. He also has a book out, which I'll talk about a little bit too. So a lot of my information came from his website because he just knows a lot about this.
Okay, so this is the guy that you were talking to earlier, yes? No?
Yeah, I had Facebook messaged him because I wanted to make sure he was okay with me using so much of his research and information because, you know, like I said, a lot of it came from his website. So there are a lot of different English words that are used as translations for yokai. So yokai sometimes translated as monster, demon, spirit, goblin, but it encompasses a lot more than that. Mm-hmm. The word yokai also includes ghosts and gods, and transformed humans and animals and spirit possessions and urban legends and lots of other
so it's
phenomena.
It's pretty much like using the blanket term paranormal.
Yeah, it's kind of an umbrella term, but they're just these supernatural entities from folklore.
Heard.
And it's a broad, vague term, and nothing in the English language really exists to accurately describe it. So that's why we have all of these different words for what it translates to. But during the Edo period, which is between 1603 and 1868, there was an unprecedented flourishing of culture and art in Japan. So ghost stories and stories about monsters and strange phenomenon from all over Japan experienced a huge surge in popularity. The very first mythical bestiaries were put together by folklorists and artists like Tomiyama Sekien, who collected the oral traditions of rural Japan for consumption by the growing urban population.
So it's like the Grimm brothers.
It's very cool. It's very cool. Toriyama's The Illustrated Night Parade of 100 Demons set the stage for other artists, and the
Excuse
yokai...
me.